Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. In this show, together with our guests, we explore different ways in which we can develop a meaningful relationship with our bodies and minds and respond to the current state of the culture in a quest for more integrated and embodied perspectives. Hello and welcome to Material for the Brain podcast. This is Matan Levkovich. This is the first episode for 2025 and I'm very excited to have again in the podcast Nita Little, who has been the most viewed guest on my podcast so far. For those who don't know Nita, I will give you a short introduction to her. Nita Little is a dance researcher, a theorist and an artist, and one of the founding developers of Contact Improvisation. She holds a PhD in performance studies with the focus on the articulation of presence and creative actions of attention. Her life work is inclusive of mind-body training, performing, choreographing, researching, and writing about the ethics, politics, and entanglements of somatic relations. About a month ago, Nita was teaching a seminar in Vienna, and during her visit, I hosted her for a Shabbat dinner at my place. And during the evening, I came to realize that we share an overlap with our perspectives on choreography and the potential of performance practices. I invited her to come again to the show in order to dive into this fascinating topic. She agreed, and here we are. During the conversation, we ended up talking about many things. We talked about her current projects, including performances and teaching practices. We talked about the concept of emergence in choreography and its transformative potential. We talked about how to move beyond representation in dance. We explored the concept of choreography as an act of doing rather than showing. We talked about the interplay between identity and dance and the limitation of cultural constructs in artistic creation. We talked about trance states and altered state of attention and how they can be used as tools to enhance creativity in dance. We talked about dance as a relational practice that fosters interconnectedness and dissolve boundaries between performers and audiences, and on the importance of dancers claiming their authority as creator and researchers, and much more. Nita is one of my favorite conversational partners, and I hope you will enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to her. And now I bring you Nita Little. Hello, dear Nita. Welcome to my podcast. How are you, my friend?
Very good, Matan. How are you?
I'm very good. You're my first guest for 2025. I'm very excited. It's the second time you're here. And I was very happy to find a reason to invite you again. First, because your episode was the most watched episode in my podcast so far. So it's great to bring you again to my listener who loved the episode that we had together.
Great.
And
can you remember what the emphasis was on it? Do you remember its emphasis?
In the last conversation, we talked a lot about attention. The name was and your research on attention and how it relates to contact improvisation and dance and movement. And we talked about certain aspect of CI and its history and its context. And today I want to guide us to a bit of a different territory that is still very much connected to your practice. But before that, maybe just a quick check-in. How are you? Where do I catch you in the world? What are you doing right now?
You catch me 5 days before I head to Australia. I live in a really complex world. I just got back 3 weeks ago from India. No, 2 weeks ago from India, where I was actually on tour first in Boulder and then in Vienna, and saw you. Then went to India where my son got married. I returned. I'm just beginning to kind of feel like I'm back, and now I'm heading out again. So I'll be in Australia for 6-7 weeks, something like that. I'm also working on a piece right now that will be performed in north of New York City in the Hudson Valley sometime in the spring. And I'm working on materials that I'm going to be teaching. Some of what I'm doing is teaching a research practices for dancers, specifically for the ISSC, the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, which is my major project. And so I'm doing that at the same time. I'm kind of trying not to feel overwhelmed because I don't like that word. So I'm doing what I need to do to manage all of it and be in touch with people because it's the holidays and it's the new year.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm getting overwhelmed just by hearing your schedule. So good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
No,
I was going to do
I'm
something in Berlin. A performance in Berlin. I'm postponing that. So
no,
that feels good.
I feel, our profession, the dance world, kind of keep calling us to go on the road and to meet many people, but it's so different than my nature. I'm such an introvert. I love my house. I love staying at home. I can stay for hours with my family. So I just
Totally
hear the amount of traveling. So what is this performance you're making?
The piece I'm about to do also is going to be structured around a lecture. I'm struggling because I haven't found the lecture I want. And it will have choreographers participate in making work. It will probably be more complex than the previous one. We've got a few more days to pull it together. So for rehearsal and whatnot. This one is going to be focused on trance. So I'm trance states. I'm very interested in the ways people have access to their imagination and to their understanding of relationship.
Okay,
their
trance
ability
state.
to be in trance states. I'm a clinical and medical hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner, and I call it, it's called trance states. It's really just simply, a kind of brainwave phenomenon and how what kind of attention you're paying and the way that you're paying attention. The quality, what you're accessing, what you're attending to. So I, many years ago, got training in all of this because I was interested. I really understood physicality, and I deeply believe that the mind is a body. The body is a mind.
I wasn't aware that you're doing a performance. And actually, it's great because it fits neatly with the topic I anyhow wanted to talk to you, and just to bring the audience with us. So around a month ago, when you were in Vienna, we had a nice dinner together, and we spent a long evening conversing. And during the conversation, we had a moment talking about choreography, and I realized that I have a very similar interest or certain similar perspective or direction towards choreography, which moves away from representation. Right. And that's the topic I would like to expand with you.
Right.
So, and through that, maybe exploring the composing emergence, the program that you're also offering people and your approach to choreography. So what would be for you a good place to start? Maybe a good question is like, why to move from representation, or what is the issue for you with representation on stage?
Yeah, well, most dancers have been taught choreography from a representational perspective. They've been asked to make dances about something. And the second you say about, now you're asking for something to be represented. the issue with representation for me is that it doesn't do anything. The marvelous thing about contact improvisation is that it does something. It's not representing a darn thing. It is the thing it represents. It's only itself. It's nothing more than itself. And what it does is it brings people into this extraordinary physical relationship that then introduces lots and lots and lots of other levels of engagement. And there are so many levels that we know that we do not try to fix or stabilize or condition or name or stop the growth of this thing, contact improvisation. So we investigate it. We speak about our investigations. In making work, when I'm working on something that's doing something, that actually accomplishes something, I have to find, I seek that thing that is without end. It's not a closed form. Something about it is constantly in a state of emergence. And emergence is one of the things that really excites me. Emergence is a phenomenon that happens when the sum of the parts, when what happens is greater, I should say, than the sum of the parts that go into making it. So something happens that is greater, that one cannot name, that one cannot predetermine. So something greater than simply the human is imagination is engaged in emergent phenomenon. And I'm interested in particular in the doing that does that. I'm interested in the doing that that exceeds the ways I've been acculturated, the ways that I have come to understand the world. And if I were engaged in representation, all of that would be present. It's not that it's not going to be present in the work that I do, but the work that I do is going to exceed all of that. And I'm interested in how I condition that, how I make work that allows me basically to disappear.
And when you said me, what do you mean when you say me?
Me, the choreographer. It's not about me, the choreographer. It's not even about the dancers. It's about something that is happening. And it's in the doing. When work does something, something happens.
Okay, so an equivalent to, let's imagine we put a few woods and we light fire, then there is fire. We are not representing anything. We are, the thing itself has a certain has a certain effect. That in that case it's warmth.
Exactly. And that effect will produce a phenomenon. People moving around the fire, people, who knows, cooking food.
What is the phenomena then of somebody who is going on stage with the idea that they represent with their performance a topic they're interested in?
Well, they bring to that performance what they understand about the topic, what they have, and that may require an incredible amount of skill. The Lion King, for instance, how much skill did it take to learn to move in like a cat, or cats or whatever it is? Those representational performances are not without skill. I mean,
No,
I
of
don't
course,
want
of
to,
course.
but they are bound to a cultural understanding that is very comforting to people. And that
Okay.
cultural
Now you.
understanding is too limited for what I'm interested in. As an artist, I could say that's been done. And the culture, as I understand it, is not finding new ways in the world to make the world a better place. It's not finding new ways to be in relationship with things. It's not coming to new understandings about what's possible, except in very technological, mechanistic ways. And as a dancer, I find that a grievance, a profound grievance.
I have to share. I had goosebumps when I heard you because it's really like, I feel like, it's really hitting the how you said in English, the nail on the coffin. Is it the saying that you say in English?
You see the nail on the head, but yeah,
A nail on the head.
pounding the nail
Okay,
in the
that's another
coffin.
thing. That's another thing. Sorry, maybe that's the current culture references I have in my mind. So the
I
nail
think
on the
there's
head.
two. I don't know the coffin one. I've heard it. I just can't tell you what it is.
Okay. Yeah, but because I really, like it's a bit. I feel like I'm conversing with you now and on something that I really agree and resonate with you, because what you said is like, okay, then it's when you work with representation, you're anchoring yourself to the cultural context in which you embed yourself, and
Exactly.
that's your frame.
Exactly.
But just kind of to challenge that position, because I agree with you, and that's why I'm also not interested in that. But those who are very much interested in that, they would even come and say maybe like, hey, but whether you like it or not, you represent something. Nowadays it would, the people in the dance world who are kind of very much saying those words, they would mainly point to things that are bound to your identity. Hey, but you do represent it. You are a woman on stage. Then you have this identity there, whether you like it or not. You're wearing clothes. Maybe you're wearing a jeans. Then like you wear a Nike shoes. Then you have this brand. So all this, it's inevitable. So so whether you like it or not, you're there. It's there. So what is your answer? How do you respond to something like that?
So as an artist, I recognize that the representation is in my audience. It's not me. I can recognize that they are culturally bound human beings, but that does not limit what I do with because truly I am more than my identity. I hope you recognize that. I'm so much more than my cultural identity. My cultural identity is significant because it determines a great deal of what I can do within the context of culture. But in the making of work, I do not limit myself to identity. I don't limit myself to the politics of identity. I can recognize them. I can recognize that for many people, that will be part of how they can understand what I'm doing. But I have to ask myself, for whom am I making work? For what am I making work? And what I'm making work for is for what work can do, the way it can bring new worlds into being. I'm not interested in So, in the word represent, there's represent. We're doing it again. We're doing it again. We're doing it again. I'm really fascinated by the imagination and the fact that the imagination does an incredible job of representing the world for us so that we can get along. But it doesn't always do that. I mean, the thing about the imagination, to me, the imagination is present in every instant of experience. Now, a great deal of what's happening with that imagination is it's doing the action of recreating a world I can recognize. But I can play with it as well in ways that, so that I find the boundaries of culture and I can exceed them. I'm interested in exceeding the boundaries of culture. Contact improvisation was a way of taking something that people do and finding and taking them to the boundary of what's possible. For a number of years, I taught materials, and I still do occasionally, materials on rewilding. Rewilding is about how is it that we exceed those boundaries? How is it that we find the edges of what we are willing to understand and go beyond them? And doing that creatively is
for
really...
me, that's something I keep... I must say, I just want to inject something short. For me, it's just a miraculous thing that dancers questioned, or that dancers are trapped in the boundaries of culture. Because for me, it's like dance gives us the opportunity to immediately experience something that is beyond culture. Just the fact that we interact with gravity, it's like that's it. You're beyond culture. You're dealing with natural laws. It's like, so I don't even understand why is the insistence on
gender's not going to play in that, and identity is not going to happen there, other than the fact that you recognize, because of gravity, that you are intimate with the earth. In fact, you're moving earth. You're not moving earth. You're moving earth. Without the earth, without that the depth of that relationship, that reach that you must make in order to move, that reach is this profound connection. And yeah, you're right. That exceeds culture immediately.
So, can I ask you a personal question about what you said before? I mean, maybe it's obvious, but still, I wonder, because there are different ways to understand it. But you said, like, I'm not limited by my identity. What in your lived experience are resonating with that statement? What are moments that you experience yourself in a way that it's clear for you that, okay, that has nothing to do with my identity? And I just mentioned one example now with gravity, but are there other mediums or moments that you can kind of really have that clarity?
That's interesting. Interesting question. It was I'm fairly intellectual. I'm an intellectual dancer. I enjoy thinking about problems, about how it is we do things. One of the things I take a great deal of time thinking about is relational practices and how it is we understand the human as a relational being. I'm very fascinated at the fact that everything, if we can experience it, is a relationship. The fact of experience is the fact of relations. So paying attention to what it is we're doing when we're doing relations is something that is fascinating. Some of that is definitely organized by the fact that I'm a female and an older female. But some of it has nothing to do with that. It has more to do with maybe the fact of flesh, or the fact of the quality of a quality of my attention, which some of that could be culturally bound, but not all of it is culturally bound. I'm very interested in what happens when I allow myself to, engaging the imagination, imagine something more. And that isn't necessarily me functioning as an gendered being.
Yeah, or any other aspect of identity. I don't know, because it's I feel like that it's, yeah, again, like there is a I studied dance 2010, so until 2013. So maybe now things are a bit different, but I had a lot of very athletic and very somatic training. And then I ended up living in Vienna, where dance is very, very much anchored, in, let's say, different ways of representation mainly, and very intellectual way of approaching choreography, which, again, I'm not against the intellect at all. I'm also, I would testify as an intellectual dancer, but I don't find my identity in my experience of my body. I don't, like, if I focus my attention on experiencing my body, then I don't see identity there. I see an ever-changing landscape of sensations, and then I don't really understand where, like, how.
So, for instance, if we were to say, get into your fluid body, I'm doing a very kind of body-mind centering thing, in moving with your fluid body. That doesn't require a gendered notion at all. It requires an ability to think on the scale of the very small. And one of the things I do to change my cultural positioning is to change the scale of my attention. I do it all the time. To get into somatic experience, one has to change the scale of your attention. And you have to change the quality of your attention.
Can you define this quickly? That the difference between the scale and the quality of attention.
Okay, the scale of attention means a lot. If you're going to be talking culturally with cultural notions, you're going to be talking on the scale of the human. And on the scale of the human, I am definitely a white woman, and I definitely have a certain history. I work in time on that scale with a very predictable time. I'm pretty good at telling a minute when a minute is over. I was trained in Cunningham techniques. So Cunningham was great with time, clock time. When I dip down below that onto the level of experiencing Nita as many, and I do that all the time, the Nita that is many, many, many beings, and all those beings are brilliant, by the way. On the level of many beings that selflessly work together, selflessly give of themselves constantly to one another, and end up composing me on the human scale. But on the scale of the many, the multiple, I also am. Now, I'm not in a cultural reference at all. I'm on a different scale. And on that scale, it's very interesting to study relationship. And we can change scale again. We can change scale to the scale of the many that I also am when I recognize that I am inseparable from the beings around me, including you. And on that scale, that's another scale that is not generally culturally recognized. It is under some circumstances. And I think one of the reasons why people love war, and they love war, is because it brings them into that understanding. But dancers also understand that too. The understanding that you're more than one. The experience of being on the scale of a being that is more than one.
But sorry, just to make sure that I heard correctly, you said that that's why people love war?
That's one of the reasons why I think the world loves war. Cultures
but how does the experience?
war.
How does the experience of? But how does the experience of war relates? This is maybe where I have a gap. How does the experience of war relates to the understanding of our interconnected nature?
Because when people go to war, they function as units. They function as many.
Okay.
They work together selflessly. Selflessly, they work together. They join in these incredible... And dancers can do that too. They don't necessarily. I mean, the quality of a dance company is the quality of their ability to do that.
Okay, now I understand you. So in a tribal way, they work together against another tribe. Okay, so we're still in the realm of tribalness. It's not because you know, when you said to...
We haven't quite exceeded. And you can go even to another scale in which you exceed tribe. So I'm just talking scales. I'm just taking you through scales.
Okay, I understand now. And so then first of all, it seems to me that it embeds a certain morality in it, because if I do recognize that you and I are connected, then if you're separated and you're something else, and you're away from me, and I have nothing to do with you, and then I have no responsibility towards you, and I don't need to care about you because you're... But the moment I recognize our interconnected nature, then it also embeds a certain morality, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think the point of having values and having more moral values, moral imperatives, is a recognition of separateness, which is part of the reason that when I practice thinking as a multiplicity, which I practice often, then, and if I'm dancing, say, with another dancer in contact improvisation, when my understanding, my identity of Nita breaks the boundary of culture, and I start to identify as the body of my partner, as it inclusive of the body of my own flesh form, but my flesh form exceeds me and becomes not a we, because a we takes two, but an extended me, an extended being. When I become an extended being, now whatever happens to my partner is happening to me. And I don't know about you, but inside myself, my cellular being does not have to have values. It doesn't have to have moral imperatives. There isn't that kind of separate structure going on inside my own physiology. And when I dance with somebody else as me, the identity of Nita has taken on this larger form. Now I'm beyond cultural identity, and I am also in that space in which whatever I value as Nita is inclusive of the being I am also. So I don't have to think to take care of that person anymore. I am that person, and my care extends through their whole form. It's only when I'm separate from them and dancing separately that I have to really act in a way that says that is value laden.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. You're separating the act of consciously recognizing morality and versus the being of morality that is an
Exactly.
extension of your expansion of your state. Okay.
Exactly. I am
Good
the
point.
being that is moral. And that's an amazing experience. That's an experience that we all seek.
Yeah. I don't know if we all seek, but I definitely interested in that. No, but I understand the separation. It's good because if you are not anymore you and I am not I, but there is a we, then I don't want to chop any part of the we
it's
because
not a we anymore. It's not a we. I think you have to understand. We.
It's a new I.
It's a new I.
So it's
an extended
I. Yeah.
I.
Okay. Extended I. Then there is no. It doesn't make sense to harm that new I.
In
but
any way.
I want to ask you.
And the other thing is, whatever you're experiencing is my experience.
Yes, I think that's something we I remember having that something similar in the chat because that for me also solves the whole topic of consent. If I'm in that state, there is no need for consent anymore. I'm beyond that because I'm, as you said, I'm experiencing what you experience.
I'm in communion with you.
Yeah.
You are as I care about you the way I care about my left foot, which is greatly.
Okay, so just bring it back to the topic of choreography. So then why to do that on stage? Like, why not? Because, okay, maybe, what is your reason? Maybe let's not talk about philosophically. Why are you, Nita Little, choosing to do that research and to bring it on stage? What is the value of people seeing something that is not anchored in representation, but actually aims towards that type of experience? And maybe later we can talk about the strategies, which I'm also interested. But first, the reason.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to accomplish getting dancers that I haven't worked with over an extended time to be able to do that, because that takes training. And I'm going to, for instance, in what I'm doing in upstate New York, going to be working with dancers that are not my dancers. They're not necessarily people I've worked with. So that,
okay, but that's another thing.
So in terms of that work, that's not a specific goal. In terms of the ISSC, the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, it's absolutely a goal. But
okay, so why do you have this goal?
Because of what happens. The phenomenon of emergence that happens when I become a larger form. Synchronicity is extraordinary. The quality of time is amazing. The ability for communication to happen without it being, communication can happen. We think communication, we think of a reciprocal relationship. We think I do something, you say something back. I say something, just as you and I right now are in a kind of communication. Yeah. But there is a communication. Yeah, there is a communication that is much faster than that, in which I know something, and in that moment, you know it. It is communication with a sense of immediacy that is embodied. It's a kind of embodied communication. I'm not separate from the being that within with which I am in communion. So there is a way of being in the world. And that interests me, and I'm very interested in what are the boundaries of communion. What else can I be in communion with? What if how do I enrich what it means to be a human so that I am able to commune, with trees, with the intelligent beings, all intelligent beings. And you must understand, I just said something really important, which is I no longer think of a living in a stupid world. I live in a world that is brilliant. I live in a world in which trees are intelligent. So are plants. All plants are intelligent. They are beings. I do not live in a world in which the only being of value are humans. I've stopped
Fair
that
enough.
world. That's not a world I'm interested in living in. It does not enrich the planet Earth. It does not enrich the beings on the planet Earth. It only depletes it. That thinking is being proven wrong over and over and over again. I mean, the science that's happening right now is so exciting. You kind of want to get into it because we're discovering that intelligence does not require brain.
But still, my question, and I'll insist on it because I am. Wait,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry if I keep
just point you.
distracting it.
No. I love, like for me, I invited you because I enjoy listening to you as well. So, so feel free to take my question to wherever you go. But I would insist because I'm interested in that. Also, as a fellow choreographer, I understand everything you're saying, and I have a lot of reference on a level of experience to what you're saying, and I'm convinced about that. But for me, it still invites the question: why should I invite people to witness something like this rather than just teach them to experience it directly through dance?
And I have a problem with the fact of a dance being limited to being a visual art. As you said, invite people to see it. I'm really wondering what happens if it is possible for a dance to be experienced in ways other than simply visual. Because that visuality automatically creates separation. We see only planes. We do not see in 3 dimension. We kind of create 3 dimensions by seeing things having 2 eyes and being able to see a slight variation. And that slight variation brings the world into 3 dimensions. But touch experiences 3 dimension. Touch already is 3-dimensional. So it's much faster in terms of information gathering than visual. Although visual has its own speed and its own possibilities. But when we limit our experience of dance to the visual world, now we're limiting it to form, design, and all those things as a choreographer are important. But they're very limited when you're talking about relationship. So one of the things when I think about what choreography can do, I'm wondering, how does it do more than simply the visual? How does it do something that allows audiences to be present in an experience of something? Now, not all audience wants to be present that way. audiences are adapted to being outside of an experience and observing it visually. Can we get them to observe it tactily? If so, what would you do? Orally, can you get the observance to happen orally? Symphonies do that.
That's what you just phrased now. I mean, I use the word witness because for me it kind of expands the visuals.
Yes, that's
but
a good word.
exactly the question. That's exactly the question that I've been asking myself in the last 2 years in the studio with my students.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get a little bit into the question of what have you came up with so far as strategies, and I can also share a bit of my own approach. Great. And to see, what, because I think it's a very, very complicated task, but I do have certain intuitions and I agree with you that audiences, in many cases, you can design a setup that it will be almost impossible not to view it as an exterior guest who is seeing something outside of them. But I think that there are many ways to design it differently. And I think that maybe it also connects to the movement away from representation. I think representation pulls us into the mind, into the intellect, into thinking and analyzing. So when I do something that is clearly based on representation, it pulls the audience to start analyzing. What do I understand? What is being told right now? What is the story? What's the meaning? And that again moves you away from the direct experience of what is happening. So what have you came up with in your own practice that you feel like that helps you as a choreographer to move forward in that direction? If you enjoyed the conversation so far and found it meaningful, please consider to share the episode with others and to click the like button. These small actions might seem meaningless, but they are the fuel that helps the podcast project to move forward. Your attention and time is highly valued, and we would love to hear more about the insights you might have from listening to this episode. And please consider to subscribe to the channel to be notified for all future uploads.
So I have two concerns. One is the relationship of the dancers and how dancers can work with dancers, what they're producing together, whether they can step into emergent phenomenon, which is phenomenon beyond their idea of what they're doing. And the other concern is the audience, and can I help them cross that line from the visual world into the witnessing world, the world of becoming part of and part of the experience of the thing itself. So I make work. My work is always based in improvisation. I will have structures where people, have places to be at specific times. But generally, I'm working with the art of scoring, and I score. So when I think about working with these two different things, initially I think of having two separate scores. The dancers have a score and the audience have a score, and I'm looking at how those two scores interact. What do you mean by
the score for the audience? Because I understand when you say score for the dancers, but this is like what you imagine a spectator would be busy with, or like?
Yeah, so I'm working on a score. This is a simple one. It's one I use often as a description of having a score for dancers, for say 7 dancers, and then the audience has a score of always remaining, say, 10 feet from one of the dancers. Each audience member is given a dancer. They have to remain within 10 feet of that dancer at all times. So the audience ends up embedded in the dance.
Okay, so they're not sitting.
They're not.
You need a big space for such thing, no?
You do. Yeah. And maybe you have to do it outside. That's one score. What's another score? Imagine. The audience, while observing a dance, is given the score of translating what they see visually into an action that they can feel.
Okay, interesting. But
and
that's
so that
require
they
quite
don't get to they have to be standing.
that requires quite
Or,
a motivated and engaged audience, no? Like
that's
they cannot
exactly
come
right.
just kind of, all right, I came, somebody pulled me to see this performance. No,
No, or
they need to
even
really.
saying, you've got these dancers, while you're watching, face the same facing, the same direction as any one of the dancers at any time. You simply cannot just face forward. You have to constantly be moving your facing.
Interesting.
So
I
giving
think
the audience
sorry.
a score, giving the audience a score.
Okay, so it's actually, okay, because there's something I didn't understand. It's really like directly giving them instruction. It's not something hypothetical. It's really practical. Okay, because I think maybe I'm I'm very. I have a hard time of asking. I feel like it's already demanding to ask people to come to see a performance, because I know that for me it's very difficult to make myself move out of my home and buy a ticket and take the U-Bahn and arrive to the theater and wait and then sit and then pay attention. I feel it's so much to ask from people for something that is, so to speak, who knows what are they getting by doing all of that. So I feel a bit hesitant to ask them to do more things. So I think, and I don't know, what do you think about just, like when you break the fact that you have one front and you just put people, I don't know, you put two fronts and the audience can see each other, suddenly that's it. They are part of the show, like in the most easy way. You just see each other and you're not anymore.
Just that way. I did a piece just that way. I had the audience on stage. On two sides of the stage. And the audience, well, I had the audience do lots of things. I had the audience come in, and when they came in, they had to pass through dancers who were moving. When they arrived, they had to arrive and stand someplace. While they stood there, they were, I think I called them a forest. I had the dancers moving through the forest. Then after the forest, I had the dancers, the audience sit in seats. And that was one of the ways that I handled it. So I did give them downtime, time where they just had to sit, although they were seeing the audience on the other side at the same time. I once also was part of, this is years and years ago, early Contact days, probably in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, San Francisco. A woman by the name of Yanni Novak. And Yanni is memorable because she saved Yvonne Rainer's life in New York City. But she's also memorable because she herself was this like really bold mover. And one of the things, she was interested in Contact, but she was more interested in her own work. And one of the things she did was make a piece called Boko Maru. And Boko Maru was a dance that was in, golly, what was the book? It was a sci-fi, novel, the same sci-fi novel that had where people would grok a situation, and grok became a word that went into culture. It was interesting. But anyway, she had the audience, she had the dance company wash the feet of the audience when they came in.
Oh my gosh.
So all audience members got their feet washed. And once their feet were washed, then they watched the performance. And of course, the performance began soul to soul, foot to foot, dancers starting there.
Yeah. No, these are kind of really more radical approaches. I think for me, like I'm also thinking a little bit like okay, because we are living in a time where as you said, like you have this your fundamental starting point is that you're a body mind, and I feel that that's not the common starting point for most people's experience, because most people they have no practical relation to their body. Maybe beside, the eating and, other physical activities. So I think like how to kind of pull somebody very gentle into that experience. And I think that you mentioned that you also work with creating certain relation between the dancers. And I can imagine, and I want you to expand on that has something to do with what you've mentioned before, trance state, going into a different way of paying attention. So why do you think it's an important element?
To me, dancers are not just explorers, and they're investigators. They're engaged in something that, if we can produce results, has the authority, could have the authority, and I'm seek for dance to have the authority to explicate, to expose, to offer culture access to experience that otherwise culture has not produced to date. So I'm interested in dancers recognizing their authority. And I don't think they do. I think that culture has diminished dance into being an entertainment. An entertainment form. Audience comes, they expect a certain level and degree of entertainment. And they do not expect to be touched. Maybe touched in their heart, but not something that is going to change who they are. And we don't set the same limits to science. And I'm interested in dance being an equal to science. To me, it is. It's a kind of mode of accessing what it can be to be a human, to be to the real, what is possible here. Now, it requires imagination, but so does science. Anybody who thinks science doesn't require imagination is absurd. And yet we don't do it, and we should not do it in the way that science does its job. We have other modes and means. And I'm interested that we start becoming, believing in ourselves, believing and recognizing what we have to offer and starting to offer it. And figuring out how to do that in a performance mode is tricky. I absolutely agree with you. It's tricky.
Yeah, because I kept wondering with myself, and I don't know, maybe you have some references on a more from a literature about it. But when I try to think from a evolutionary perspective, why would people start dancing? And why would people start performing to one another? For me, like it has to be something with the transformative power of dance. So it has to be with something that...
I have to stop you. I think it's different than that. Why did people start dancing? To create a result, to engage and put their whole being into the act of producing a result. They were doing something. They weren't looking like something. In the U.S., and when in the 1880s, 1870s, perhaps 60s, perhaps, the U.S. government took dance away from the native tribes that they had been separating out and isolating, and they could no longer dance in circles. They could no longer dance together. They said, you can do spectacle. You can have one person at a time do something really marvelous, but you cannot dance together. You can, and basically that was to say that they could show one another their movement, but they could not do the movement. They couldn't be it.
Okay, but I don't think it's so different than what I'm saying, because I feel like that when I said the word the transformational power of dance, that's what I mean. Like I go and I dance and something happens, not to me, but something happens in the same way as we described that we put logs and make a fire. And I think that
right.
If I think about an action of somebody like of the what is the notion of performance in that context, for me it's just the person who is guiding the attention and leads into that experience. Maybe then it's not so different than a shaman. And I feel like that one thing that is definitely really, really limiting dance from being experienced like that is size. I think that's something that I don't know if many choreographers thinking about that, because we are working within a system that encourage growth, and you want to also survive financially, and then if you perform more and to more audience, and now you had a sold out venue of 400 people and 600 people. I feel like that there is a technical number called the Dunbar number that is around 150 that relates to the growth of a community. That's the limited number that we can have immediate relationship. If we grow above this number, the society would either split or become hierarchical, etc. And I feel that there is a Dunbar number for dance. Like if you go and you perform in front of... I've been now in a performance of Israeli choreographer Yasmin Goder, which I also would love to have here on the podcast. And the performance was in a huge venue of, around 600 people. And it was almost impossible not to experience it like that. There was a big distance between me and the performers. They were far away. It was almost like watching a dance on a television. Even though that it was live. And I feel like that, when you mention something like, okay, you go and the audience is washing the feet of the performers are washing the feet of the audience. It's like, it's intimate. And I think that this is an ingredient that isn't, it's not like when you take out intimacy from dance, I think like it's not dance anymore.
Right. It's show. It's something else.
Maybe.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right. This does not mean, I have done dances that I thought were really successful. That where, how when you watch a relationship, like a relationship, a bee inside a flower, getting itself covered in the what is it? What's it called? The pollen, just totally getting covered in pollen. You have a visceral sensation when you see that. Yeah? That just watching it, part of you is the bee. That is that tiny little creature that can go inside something so lush away, all full of pollen. That ability for us to experience something as ourselves is a really important ability. It's the ability to step inside the body of someone else or something else. And the question really is, how do we incite that in an audience? Intimacy is absolutely critical. That it is happening to you is important. I remember watching Martha Graham dance, Martha Graham and her company when I was young. And I, at that point, knew I was a dancer. And when I watched it, I was inside the body of that old lady. I was also inside the body of her dancers. I could step into anybody's body at any time and experience what they were experiencing. That capacity to be greater than oneself is an incredibly important capacity for our audiences to gain. So they're not watching us from the position of being separate, but they are watching us from the position of being that which they are watching. And I think what we want is to develop scores for audiences so we don't leave our audiences passive, that we ask them to do something. And that we and maybe it's very, very simple, like simply, while you're watching this dance, I'd like your hand to be in motion. Never let your right hand has to always be moving. It could be as simple as that.
Yes. It's an interesting thing. I always feel a bit almost shy as a choreographer to
make
do something like this. Yeah, like I feel like maybe when I think of the role of choreographer, I think my main job is to guide the attention of the people who are coming to watch whatever I made. And I feel
yes, it is. I think that's true.
And I feel like it's a little bit like sometimes I also what's the like I look at it also from a perspective of a host, almost like like when you came to my house and I prepared you dinner and I welcomed you and I made sure that you have good time, not in the sense of entertainment, but it's like that I care for you. So that's how I see choreography as well. Okay, you come here. I want you to be okay, and I want you to come out from this experience feeling like it had positive impact on you.
But you offered me wine. You offered me food. You made many offerings. You offered me a chair. You offered me a tour. All of those offerings did not leave me separate. They engaged and included me. And that's all I'm saying. Maybe we don't say, audience, you must do this. We say, we offer the possibility that while you're watching, your hand is moving. Please feel free to move your right hand and notice when it is waving in front of your neighbor. We don't want that. But feel free to have it making micro movements. And that's just an offering. And maybe you say, and maybe you have And maybe the audience won't do it. Maybe you have to check in.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
How's it going? Yeah.
It's a good point to experiment with.
That. I'm just saying, I'm just wondering out loud right now, Matan.
No, fair enough, because what I did first, I had a guest in the podcast that I actually think I should connect you to. She's an amazing woman, and she's part of an amazing organization. Her name is Asha Shirbakova, and she's a biologist, and we talked about the phenomena of mirror neurons. And she's a person who has been a scientist for many years, who later started to do embodied practices. And she has a very clear memory of the difference of watching dance as a visual experience and watching dance as an embodied experience. And what she told me about mirror neurons is that the more I have reference to what I see, the easier it is for me for it to become an embodied experience. No, so if, for example, I go and I do a triple backflip and land on my hands and do a forward ukemi, for most people it will just be a visual experience because they have no idea what the hell is happening there. So for me, that's why I really enjoy working with very, very small movement and small gestures. I mean, now in the current piece that I'm working with my student, we are working with the movement of the eyes, just opening and closing the eyes, and taking the time to shift between the state that I don't see anything and where I'm starting to engage with the visuals, almost like the process of waking up and falling asleep. And that's something that is very relatable, and it's very easy to start sensing it in your body as a cue. So,
may I offer something?
Yeah,
there?
Of course.
Just because in doing that, you are putting your dancers into a trance. I just want you to notice that.
Can you expand?
To be able to capture the moment in which you are awakening and recognizing. You notice how I just start to slow down. To capture the variations that exist between this moment I had to go someplace. That place that I went is a trance.
And yeah, okay, it's very interesting that you're saying it, because for me the reason, like, or the physical practice, okay, and maybe that would be actually okay. So I have a different starting point, because I feel like that I'm not that sophisticated when it comes to putting words into actions, when it comes to guiding people how to relate to one another, or like how to go into but I'm very good in articulating different things you can do for yourself in order to move out of your mind and into expansion. And then I feel like, okay, it will solve the relational problem. Like, you will be somewhere else and it will just work its magic. So I've been trying to develop different tools that you can practically do to alter your state with dance. And I feel like that when you're in this altered state, then the relations are not anymore action reaction, they are something else. That's what I
yeah, you call it an altered state. I call it a trance.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about this ability to be a mind body that changes state. I think that's fabulous. What a wonderful project. I love the project. To experience with some kind of interiority, a sense of an interior language, the difference between one state and another, even if it can't end up in verbal language. There is experiential language that you're capturing, and you're recognizing, that thing, that sensation, that sensation of where I go.
Yeah, it's really magic. It's and I'm totally with the motion, with the motion to bring forward dancers into power, into recognizing that what we know has a meaning, applied meaning, and yeah, and I think that in that regard, I feel like that working within the, at least here in Vienna, I don't know, maybe in the States it's different, but working within the limitation of funding actually inhibits that ability, because it's there's not so, I mean, there is a slow shift here in Vienna that I sense of new works that are starting to emerge that are going in that direction. But it's very slow because the grips of political correctness around dance is so strong that it's almost like the only thing that you are allowed to do as an artist. And it feels for me like, as you said, like, it has its role, but there has to be a certain.
Tell me what are the grips? What are the grips?
Yeah, that identity is paramount, and any movement that question the necessity to engage with choreographically with something that moves away from identity and representation of identity on stage is already morally wrong. And I have now a friend who is like,
the way I would deal with that, I think probably just being me because of who I am. I probably would do my work, which is changing the scale of attention, the scale of experience, the scale of the scale at which the dance is being organized. I'm interested in changing, in building scores that direct attention, that changes how dancers are experiencing and producing movement relationally with one another. So, in doing that, I would not fight what Vienna is trying to do. I would give them an identity, something to hang on to, period. If that's all they're going to see, I'll give it to them. But I would do the work that's doing something else altogether. Because identity is not very interesting. It's like identity. I mean, I don't mean that. On many levels, identity is very interesting. But if your work, which my work is about relational practices that ask the human to become a being that does more than what culture has defined the human to do, then identity is too limiting. It's going to reproduce culture, or it's going to produce a new culture that is just as restrictive, just as limited, because it's not changing something fundamental. And I'm interested in changing the thing that's fundamental.
Yeah, my response was to go to the free market and do my own thing on the side, and to have this podcast and talking to people that might,
I think that's fabulous. That's great.
And it creates a certain echo, like that's what I can do. But Nita, I want to also give you the time to maybe introduce a little bit here what you are about to open, I think in March, the program, because I think many people who are listening might be interested to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
And
I don't expect artists to all do work the way I do it. But I am interested in work being produced and helping artists to produce work that is embodied, and that where the point of the work is to create work that does something. And as I've said, that doingness is to find how it is we create emergent phenomenon. And emergence happens because of relations, because things come together, because stuff comes together and produces something new. I am engaged in training people to be in relations with their world, not to produce work my way, but to understand that the conversation you're having with your world is a very important place to begin in making work. So what is the conversation that you're already engaged in? So I might ask you that. What are the important conversations you're having with the world right now, Matan?
You're asking it right now?
Yeah. What are they, and where do you go to ask those questions? What time scale are you asking them on? Yeah, go ahead.
What important conversations I have about the world right now?
Not about, with.
Not about.
What are the important conversations you're having with the world? My ears are I'm gonna have to get rid of these soon.
I'm for example, I'm asking myself, what does it mean for me to lead by example in order to fulfill my role as a father? That's something I'm really in conversation with. And the places I'm going to ask.
Yeah. Where are you going to ask? Where do you go to ask those questions? With what are you, or whom are you in conversation?
Well, I will have to think about it deeply to answer
because
it.
Always the world is part of that conversation. And the world shows up by, I don't know, you happen to turn to the left and there's a book there that has a title that sets you off. And you go, what does it mean to lead by example? And who knows what the title might be. The title is The Divided Brain. And you're asking the question, how do I lead by example? And you're looking at something that says the divided brain. And somewhere in that those two things, maybe you step into the book and you go, okay, I'm coming to understand because of this book that I need to pay attention to what part of my thinking process I'm trying to answer questions for my kids with, or I'm trying to answer my questions with. Am I doing something in detail? Am I doing something in a holistic way? And when is one more important than the other? And that is what I mean by being in conversation with the world. The world's going to take you places. And if you're an artist, you notice that you're on the ride. You're going, we went by that experience. And that related to my essential question, because I'm holding a question. And I'm looking to the world to answer it. I'm not answering it alone. And to get over thinking that everything you do is just you. It's not. The world is absolutely part of what you're doing. So when I'm working with people on composing emergence, I'm constantly helping them to see the emergent moment. Where the ahas are.
That's beautiful. Practically, when is it happening?
Thank you. Golly, it is in March, early March, and I think you have to go to my website. Let me do that while we're talking, because if I go to oops, I just left you. Did I just leave you? Oh shit, I did.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
No, I didn't. Okay.
No worries.
Good.
No worries.
If I go to www.nitalittle.com,
do you see there?
I have to have my glasses on. I don't see much without them. And I'm now, it's very funny. I'm working through Safari, so it's not taking me to, it says here, hang on. Okay. It says when I look at upcoming, and it says that that is happening. My website needs cleaning. Because it's still stuck in 2024.
Okay, but maybe you, okay.
I can't tell you. I would have to
simplify it to our audience. I will put it in the show notes after. I'm gonna get it to you after the show instead of announcing it here. But I can, as you know, everybody who is listening, I love Nita. I think she's brilliant. And if you're interested in developing your creative capacity, I think she's a brilliant place to start with. And I can wholeheartedly recommend joining. It's an online program, no? So it's accessible for people online. That's true.
It is. It's online. And what's really cool is that it's not just dancers. A lot of people come from other
creative fields.
Creative fields that are interested in. It's really for artists.
So there you go.
And
my
teachers,
fellow
man. I've had people
teachers
come who want to develop a teaching program.
Okay, so creative people, teachers, artists, here's an invitation. I will put it in the show notes. And Nita, I want to say again, thank you for your time and coming here again. And I hope that maybe one day I dance for you. For one of your pieces.
Oh my God. Are you kidding, Matan? I would just like drool to have you dance for me. Because I think you are one of the most gorgeous, gorgeous dancers. I really have loved what you're doing. And I love this, by the way. I know you've got to be a fabulous teacher. I haven't ever taken class with you, but I know that you must be. Your inquiry is so deep. And what you just told me about the piece, the way you're working with people right now, it's so fascinating.
Well, let's see. I hope we manage to experience those things together. And thank you very much for your time and all your insights. And yeah, until the next time.
And forgive me for every time that I interrupted you, because I am very interested in what you have to say. And I get excited. I get overly excited.
No worries. Within the boundaries of my own culture, that's totally fine.
That's true. That's true.
Thank you, Nita.
Care about you, Matan. Let's stay in touch. Hey.
If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.